Hello, and welcome to Attunement. In this podcast, I, with the help of some of my powerful friends, will be exploring healing personal, intergenerational, and collective wounds, the side effects of oppressive power structures, activation of connection to spirit, oneness and awareness, and the intersectionality of it all. Let's connect the dots. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Attunement. I'm here with Richie Reseda, and he is going to give us all of the goods and information and kind of just thoughts on abolition. That's what we're going to be talking about today. Richie has a show called Question Culture and is just constantly educating and schooling folks on how to be more loving and centered and lead with compassion in their life. And I really love the way that he expresses himself and the way that he brings light to the ways that we can connect with one another and really heal as a culture. And I'm really grateful for his work and his energy. So I'm so excited to have you here with us, Richie. Hi.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And also, also you're a musician. I didn't even mention that, but also an incredible artist.
Thank you. That was like the most amazing bio I think I've ever been. Like the most amazing intro. Thank you. I'm actually really honored that you see my work in that way. Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Oh yeah, no, I think you're so special. That's why I really wanted to have a conversation with you. Every time that I think or I'm asked by my team, who do I want to bring on next or who do I want to have a conversation with, your energy comes up often in because I have this thing where I want Attunement to be a space where we're connecting dots, right? I want it to be a space where I get to kind of speak with and brainstorm with minds who see the world the way that I feel like I am able to see the world as well, which is through a lens of a new earth coming upon us, through the lens of ushering in a new reality. And that's what I want. That's what the ethos of Attunement is for me. Attunement Records, my record label that I created, as well as this podcast. So.
Oh shit, I didn't know you had a label too.
Yeah, I'm independent. I dropped Prelude through it with AWOL.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you.
That's really like no cap. That is so, I think it's so important for so many reasons. And I know we're gonna get in a lot of things, but something we're gonna talk about a lot probably.
Freedom is gonna be our main
topic
point. And there's so many different ways in these systems that freedom can be manifested right now if we lock into, I believe, the things that you bring to the table, which is concepts of abolition in a modern society, and how do we move with intention and love so that we can actively be creating the world that we want to see, in our community, exactly. In ourselves, in each other, in our careers, and so on and so forth.
That I didn't know if I should say more now or if you're gonna
no,
do
go ahead. This is you, baby. Take the stage.
Okay, great. So we going in now. So now, okay, so we could go there. That's why I was so excited to hear that you're starting your own label, because it's within our own communities, organizations, all the things you just said, our own companies, that we actually get to practice. We actually get to practice abolition, and we get to practice leading with our heart. All the things that you said, the beautiful things you said about my work, I was really honored. Are things that most people would agree with, right? Most people would say we should lead with our hearts. We should lead with love. But it actually requires discipline to do that. We came up in a culture that taught us to actually lead with judgment and domination, right? And we do that. Yeah. And what's the last one you said?
Control,
right? And we do that in our families, in our companies, right? And sometimes people get overwhelmed because they hear even of these new concepts, abolition and transformative justice and these ways of being, and they're like, how could we possibly change the world that much? How could we possibly get rid of prisons?
And what happens to all the bad people?
Yeah, but the work, I often tell people, just do it in your organization. Build some infrastructure in your organization of how to deal with conflict without using violence. And that's what we get to do. I also, Question Culture is a production company and a media company, and I've really been able to have so much fun, but also hard moments and learnings, trying to build abolitionist and transformative justice infrastructure, and we can talk about what that is, into the company itself. how this
I would
company
love to
moves,
talk
we
about
move
that.
different than other companies.
I
Yes,
would love
let's
to talk
please.
about that because here's the thing. I feel like we are currently in this reality, right? We have to take into
Mhm.
account the reality that we live in, because if we don't, then I feel like, disempower ourselves from being able to manipulate it the way that we need it to go for us to live in the reality that we seek, right? And
Whoa, wait, say that again, say that again, say that again.
let me see if I can, because sometimes I be channeling shit. Okay.
For real.
But basically what I said was just, I feel like we live in this reality right now. So we have to kind of meet the worlds that we see, right? We see the world that we don't want to be living in because it's very violent and it's very chaotic and it's very regimented in such a way where punishment and abuse run rampant and unchecked, and just
Mhm.
kind of the
The norm.
obvious, the
Yeah.
norm,
Mhm.
exactly. And so how do we bridge that, which is all symptoms of oppressive systems, right, into the world that we want to create? And like, capitalism exists whether we want it to or not, and it's not a behemoth that's just going to go away, but it is a behemoth that can be used. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, yes, it does. And I think
And
what I
in terms of the way that we operate our own businesses, does that make sense? From in
yeah,
terms of, like,
yes.
work where businesses run shit, like how we use that model to in an abolitionist mind frame is what I'm
Yep.
trying to say.
Yep, exactly. I'm on the same hype. That's why I was so juiced to know that I did not know that Attunement was also a label. That's amazing because that is exactly what we get to do. We actually don't have to be capitalists. I think a lot of folks mix capitalism and the market economy, and they're
Mhm.
not necessarily the same. Um, so just for
Explain
folks,
that.
yeah. So the market economy is just an economy where private individuals can buy and sell and own things, and own
Mm,
businesses, as opposed to controlled economies where the government controls what is owned and how things are bought and sold, um,
yeah.
and
Okay.
one example of a market economy is capitalism, but that's not the only one, because capitalism is also the idea that the point of the economy and the point of life is to make as much money as possible. And that the way that we should design our businesses and our relationships and our lives and our culture is all in a way to make as much money as possible, as much money as possible. And capitalism
Extract
tells us
as
that
much
only,
as possible.
yeah,
To
just
extract
I
as much
think
as possible.
I think the extraction is just like
For gain,
side effect of it.
for
Yeah.
profit. It's
Yeah.
like for profit.
Yeah, I think exactly. I feel like the profit is like the point, but we can also make businesses where that's not the case.
Hmm.
We don't have to be capitalists. We don't have to put capital before everything. And we can still have businesses. I am a business person. I have that's what I like to do. I have like 4 businesses, and we build the businesses in such a way so that yes, profit is important because that money is the lifeblood of this economic engine. But ultimately, a business is just an economic engine, and the question is, what are you going to use that engine to power? Is it just going to be your own wealth? Because you can also use it to empower entire communities and lift people out of poverty and have people build healthy, safe lives for themselves. Don't you want to do that? I do. It's way funner than just making money and spending it on designer shit. I promise.
Dude, that's the realest shit I've ever heard in my life. I think that what people, and even myself, I have to admit, like, in the process of being an independent artist and and
Mhm.
going through the music industry, I feel like, because I didn't come from a family who had generational wealth in any kind of way. You know what I'm saying? So everything that I've built for myself and have invested into myself has been through, like, work, like figuring out how to
Mhm.
make it and figuring out how to circulate it. And just, I can admit wholeheartedly, like, I don't necessarily know how to create those kinds of environments because I've never been given that kind of model, but I'm one of
No
the
model.
one of the people who is like beyond willing to figure out how
Mhm.
to, because that's always how I envisioned it, was like work to get to a point where I can implement things the way that I see them becoming a reality so that it can create a better future for people, what I'm saying, for all of us, for as a collective. So that concept and the models that you're talking about have always been in my like mind frame and
Mhm.
spirit of wanting to execute, but like I've never had kind of, I guess, context or even really anybody to even talk about this with.
Yo.
Let's say that too, like someone actually really bounced this idea off of, who maybe definitely has more tangible strategies for execution. You know what I'm saying? So just please keep going. I'm just curious to
No, I appreciate
how that manifests, how you manifest that reality in your practice, you know?
Yes, I'll tell y'all how we went about doing it. But that is why I got so excited when you said that you dropped that project on your own label, because I was like, oh, another abolitionist like business person I can talk to, especially in the music industry too.
Oh, trust me, I have all my little friends. I call
Yeah.
them, we talk to each other, we get each other through things. You know what I'm saying? Like we have to
Yep.
find each other.
But my journey to this was I started producing music when I was like 14.
Mhm.
First I was just when I was really little, I wanted to be like Dr. Dre. Like in the 90s, I
Yeah.
just knew like Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg, and would see Dre behind these huge like controllers. I didn't know what they were called or anything.
Mhm.
Um, for folks listening, it's the big thing with all the knobs and dials that helps you like mix music in music studios. And I would see him there, and I wanted to do that. And I remember there was this class that you could sign up for at school for the recorder, and I thought that was called a recorder. So I signed up for it, but they actually meant that little plastic flute.
Oh my God. Yeah. You're like, I'm about to learn how to be a producer. And they hand you a little flute. You're like,
Exactly.
what the
What the fuck is this? I was 6, and I was just like, what the? I was like, you
fuck?
start with this, and like, when do we get to like touch the Dr. Dre thing, you know?
Right.
But anyway, that was kind of like my intro to music, and then I got into producing, and really related to artists like Kanye when I was younger, because they were just talking to a reality that I could feel every day, that I didn't really hear a lot in music. And long story boring, I just always wanted to make music and clothes, and I started doing that when I was like 14, 15 years old. And by the time I got arrested when I was 19, um, I was running like a little indie label and like clothing line with my homeboys, and like producing their videos and their music and stuff, and managing a couple artists. And then I got arrested. I robbed 3 stores, and and they tried to give me 150 years to life. And I ended up getting 10 years and 2 strikes and going to prison.
Holy shit. Not 10 years and 2 strikes.
Yo, they were trying to really take our
What
lives
the
away for
fuck?
this series of
They
robbery.
gave you 2 strikes?
Yeah, because I ended up ultimately, they gave me a strike for each robbery.
Whoa.
Um, and I didn't get convicted of the 3rd robbery. But so at that time, you know, I was locked up, and as an artist, to be an artist that's locked up, it's like to be an artist and have your voice taken away from you, you know? Like your who you can express to is so limited, how you can express is so limited. And it was just crushing. The most crushing thing for me getting locked up at that age was this idea that this dream I had, I always wanted to make music and clothes, but something that would matter, something that would like push the culture forward. Um, and I just felt like I was going to lose that dream. You know, I was fighting life. And then eventually I got 10 years, and I was thinking like, I'm going to get out when I'm 28. Like I couldn't even envision being 28. I was like, at that time, I was like, damn, 10 years ago, I was 9.
Yeah.
Like, if that's how much time it's about to be before I get out, like I could not even wrap my head. So I got really, really depressed. And anyway, I was just really determined to make something um, while I was locked up that mattered, and to be heard as an artist. So eventually I was able to, I won't talk about how, because I don't want to burn the spot, but I was able to make an album while I was in prison, and put it out, and they like raided my cell, the police, the guards ran up at my cells, like this whole thing. But it was so important and so needed for me. And I wanted to do it under an independent label, because I noticed that so much of the harmful beliefs that I took on, so many of my beliefs about myself is what made me a real man, and how I had to be violent, how I had to have money, all that type of shit. I learned in the media. I learned that watching music videos and shit in the early 2000s, you know? And seeing my older cousins, and of course people in the community as well. But it's like the culture, there was so much happening in my culture, but the shit that was put on TV for everyone to see was that shit, was the violence and the patriarchy of it all. And that's who I then adopted, who I had to be a real person, or to be like, you know, to be seen as a worthwhile person. So anyway, I just wanted to create a company that would make dope shit, that would show the other sides of our that would just paint a more interesting picture and ask questions, And what I learned after doing it is that it's not just about what we put out, but it's about how we're treating each other and how we build the company itself that really makes a difference in terms of like abolition. And I don't want to say more so than what we put out, but what we put out is only going to be as abolitionist as we are with each other. So that kind of happened over time. I got out in 2018. I worked with some artists while I was in prison. I worked with a couple artists while I was out, JJ88 and Indigo Mateo. Them is my niggas, shout out. And over the course of time, we just realized we really had to apply and embody all of our abolitionist learnings to how we show up with each other, not just what we're saying, you know, once the mics turn on.
Period. I think that that's such an important point. And I feel like even what you said like all of the patriarchy and bullshit that's being projected in the media, and how often, you know, across genders, you know, whatever people's expression, I feel like there's a lot of really deeply ingrained um, beliefs that drive us to really distance ourselves from even wanting to connect with one another, from even like the idea of connecting with one another in an abolitionist mind frame, which essentially would just like, I would love to talk about restorative justice a bit more and just kind of define what that is and how that looks. And I guess maybe bridge how, you know, all of these projections that we have in front of us of how we're supposed to interact with one another, specifically patriarchy, you know what I'm saying? Because, you know, we don't see a lot of queer representation in the mass of things. And even when we see queer representation, it's like a very limited, narrow scope view of what queerness is or how it can express itself, even like as a natural thing amongst us all. You know what I'm saying? Instead of being this niche thing, but more so how it expresses itself within us. But anyways, restorative justice, I'd love to like touch upon that.
Yeah. Maybe it'll be helpful to just like define a couple of the things that we're saying.
Yeah, let's do that. Because people listening, I know the majority of my fan base comes with me from like a pop background, and you know, just realistically speaking, like the things that we were asked in interviews, the ways that we were asked to exist, you know what I'm saying, aren't necessarily deep, you know, like they're not necessarily the type of concepts that are thought provoking, but I do feel like a lot of folks followed me because they resonated with the depth that I have and am and express as I can, you know. And I feel like I want them to understand where our brains are at, you know what I'm saying?
Yo, one shout out to that. Like shout out to all your fans who like wanted that, who saw you for who you really were and are still rocking with you.
Amen.
Yeah, I'm honored to be sitting amongst y'all and having this conversation. I think it's helpful to maybe just start by defining abolition.
Yeah.
Abolition started with the abolition of slavery. But what ended up happening was those abolitionists 150 years ago, they were able to achieve something huge, which was getting slavery reformed and getting the 13th Amendment added to the Constitution. However, that amendment just says that slavery is now illegal except for as punishment of a crime. And of course, yeah, and then that created the criminal industry. Prior to that, there were no prisons or police, or prisons were like Catholic institutions you could go to if you wanted to have like time alone with God. You know, it wasn't, they were called penitentiaries. They weren't like government things that you were forced to do, right? So there was no,
I said, unless you were a woman and they thought you were a whore.
Type shit, but it still wasn't the, there was no police. It was like the community.
No, I feel what you're saying. They would send you to the convent. They would send you to go be with God.
Right. And on a community level, there was not exactly this idea that the government has police and the government has whatever, the religions may or what have you. So anyway, this whole shit that we were told is keeping us safe was actually invented to preserve slavery. And our whole relationship to harm and healing and justice was all taught to us by these people who are colonizers. There were no police prior to the end of slavery. There were no police prior to like 1920. This is all very new. The colonizers made this up, and now we have entrusted them to keep us safe. And what abolitionists are saying is, y'all don't keep us safe, we keep us safe. And right now, if the idea is that the only way society is safe is that we have to have people forcing it to be that way using
Yeah,
violence.
armed with guns and authority, and like, no.
Right. That we know that there's other ways for societies to be safe, and that indigenous folks we were keeping our people safe without using all that shit for literally thousands of years. And now abolitionists are just saying we're gonna go back to doing that.
Yeah, I mean, it's also important, besides like what was it instated for was the protection of property, right?
Mhm.
Because at the end of the day, like those who were enslaved, they were considered property. They weren't considered, human beings. Therefore, like, this was created as a way to preserve investment in things like buildings, for example. I feel like nowadays, like, the police force is more so to enforce the laws of capitalism, upon us, like the way that they drive homeless people out of their
Mhm.
areas, the way that they, the fact that there's even a such thing as private prisons that are literally just operating businesses that like make money off of arresting people and putting them into prison cells. Like, that concept itself is just so telling of what the enterprise is as a whole, And I
Mhm.
feel like, I mean, there's evidence upon evidence for years of how this is the case. I feel like it's really exhaustive to like keep having conversations about like what kind of harm has been done, because it's like there's so much evidence about it like at this
Mhm.
point, and it's so
Mhm.
in our faces,
Mhm.
and it's such a pattern at this point that to continue to have to justify or like talk about like the history of it, I feel like is insulting beyond belief at this point.
Same. I don't even really do that for real no
I
more.
don't, yeah, because it's like, how the fuck are you even gonna like question whether or not this is happening, or whether, or what the intention of it is,
Yeah.
We don't need to have people in uniform tell us that they see what's going on in their departments. Most of them are very scared to even remotely think about talking about it, because they'll lose their jobs and they'll lose credibility in their, because I feel like the police force at this point is very like mafia-esque, like it's
Mhm.
very like a gang kind of like
Yeah.
they just,
It's about
there's a
building
certain
power.
kind of code that you have to kind of stick to in order to be a part of it, and if you don't stick to that, then you're violating, like some sort
Oh,
of,
that kind of vibe. Yeah.
you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
I mean, we do that, right? Like, we do that in gang culture, we do that in tribal culture, we do that in like work culture. We
Yeah,
these
like
hierarchies and these things.
self-protection.
Mm-hmm. And the police are the same. Yeah, I completely agree with you, Lauren. I don't like, if I have to justify to somebody, prove to somebody that like mass incarceration is even a thing, then at that point I actually want to ask deeper questions about what interest do you have, not you, Lauren, but the person in this who
Right,
I'm
that you understood.
doing it. Yeah. What interest does that person have in not believing this? Why are they so committed to not believing this? And what would it mean for their life if it was true? Let's not even say, I'm not even going to sit here and try to prove to you it's true. It's obviously true. I'm not going to gaslight myself as to try to prove to you that the sky is blue.
Especially as someone who's literally experienced the effects of the prison industrial complex in
Right.
their actual life. Like, no,
Right. So yeah, I'm not
no,
going to
argue with you.
like trying to prove to you that I'm a human. I'm not going to do that. But I will have a conversation with you about why you're so invested in believing the mythology of the United States. That's a completely void of shame. Just what would be your investment in that? Why are you invested in that? What would be my invested in denouncing it? Let's talk about it openly. That's one great thing about abolition and what we're trying to build into, question culture and all these companies is like, let's get away from right and wrong. Instead of seeing it as a you versus me, let's see it as you and me trying to understand something together because we have a shared goal.
Ooh. And then defining what that goal is.
Right. We need to do that first, actually. We need to have this
Right.
goal.
We need to have the goals, because I feel like conservatives are very clear about their goals, and they're
Mm.
very aligned with each other about their goals. And all of their goals are very much to protect the establishment of colonization and the
Mhm.
establishment of patriarchy and religious dogmatic things
Well,
driving
they're trying to protect their
action.
wealth and power. And
Their wealth and
all the
power,
things you're
money,
talking about
profit,
are the systems that they have that protect their wealth and power as of right
profit,
now.
literally, literally, right.
That's
100%.
why
So
they get so mad when we say abolish the police, because or challenge any institution that they know their wealth and power and positionality is based in those institutions. I
amen.
just wish we could show them that you can still have a great life with all that extracted wealth and power. Like, you don't need it.
I know, it's so crazy. They just, it's like, it goes back to the machismo, it goes back to like patriarchy, because the whole concept of you being the most wealthy and the most powerful person that could exist is like what everyone is striving towards, or
Mm-hmm.
what, what the collective is striving
Mm-hmm.
towards, and it's literally killing us.
Mm-hmm.
There's no other way around it. That kind of extractive desire, the way that that navigates our relationships with one another, the way that abuse, like we said, is normalized and permeates the entire culture, like, is just, it's really, I feel like, really important to highlight, because, like, for example, I have a lot of amazing women in my life who are really powerful people and really like strong, caring, nurturing people. And I have seen so many of them abused by their partners and abused by these systems, and them deflate or confine their light or shrink or make themselves smaller so as to be able to exist with love in their life,
Mm-hmm.
or like what proposed love is in their life. um and like, I don't know, I feel like that has a huge psychological effect on all of us, like when we don't realize how, when we don't nurture actual connections with people, even if we're not interested in somebody anymore, or even if we're not attracted to somebody the way we used to be, like having those conversations and
Woo!
being honest and transparent to a point where you don't allow someone to lose themselves trying to fill you up. You know what I'm saying? When you don't even want to be filled by them. But just, how many people subconsciously do this on a daily basis, and how it's another symptom of this like quest for wealth and power and glory. Really, I feel like glory is a huge part of it too, because that like praise and attention that our egos get when we reach these levels, I feel like, are actually what people are seeking. They're really seeking that like validation, that external validation, that they've succeeded in these systems, that they have, conquered these systems, especially, folks in communities who have been conquered by these systems. To conquer these systems means to rise above adversity and to make it, you know what I'm saying?
To be like them.
And to be like them, instead of redefining what we want wealth and a reality to look like, like, I don't know, there's just so many possibilities of how a world can look, and I feel like there's such a rigid feeling in the atmosphere when we talk about ways we can shift and change it, because people are so scared of anything that's not what they already know, even if everything we know is literally crumbling to ruins in front of our face as we
Yeah.
speak.
Yo, it's so, I heard somebody say the other day, and it's someone I love, and I don't say this any judgment towards him, but it was a moment for me to like kind of check in myself and do some learning. He had said, he's a musician and he wanted to get into like acting and modeling, and he was like, when they read my bio, I want them to be like, damn, this nigga went hard, like. And I was like, I thought that was so interesting, that way of making decisions, of like when they read my bio, right? It reminds me of what you're saying, Lauren, about glory, like how I'm tempted by that thinking sometimes too. Like, I want my bio to say,
Hello, we're musicians. Like, we're
yeah,
egocentric as fuck.
right. So it's like, damn, but I know also what it feels like to when I'm not led by that. I know when I'm led by like, I want to make this art. I want to make this impact. I want to make this thing, and that this, I want to know that I was able to hire X amount of people, or that my homeboy's out of jail now. Not necessarily what people are going to say about me because of it. And I know I'm my most grounded self when I'm doing it for the impact and for the art and for what it is, as opposed to its reflection on me. That's when I'm in my most egocentric self.
100%. I feel like 2020 taught me that really deeply. I've told this story a couple times in the past few days, but I feel like in 2020 I had, you know, all of what I thought was going to be, this like debut era of my life lined up, like my album I had been working on, the music that I had been working on, and just, like my first festivals, like all of these kinds of like things that I was my first mini tour I was so excited
Wow.
about. And when the pandemic hit, obviously everything got canceled and wiped out. And I was like, I had to sit with myself in the midst of not having any work and not being able to be quote unquote productive, and grapple with what that meant for me as an artist. And then I had to really redefine what success looks like to me, so as to not lose my mind. Because in my mind, I was like, if I'm not getting invited to these specific spaces, if I'm not on these specific charts, if I'm not around, if these specific artists that I really admire don't co-sign me and think that my shit is dope, then I'm not worth anything. Because if I was, they would. And because if I was, they would invite me. And because if I was, I would get all these views, or I would do whatever the fuck it is, especially during that time, because everything went into the online. And I'm just real life. I'm a real life person. I'm an IRL human being. You come see about me, come watch me sing live. I'm a real life artist, like genuinely, you know what I'm saying? But online, like, I don't like to live my life for social media. Like, I'm not good, not necessarily I'm not good at it. I just like, I enjoy being present for the moments that I'm present in, you know what I'm saying? And like, hopefully I'll get better at it as I go, but like, I really do live my life in real time. Like, and I like my real life connections. Like, I feel like online culture really drove a lot of people to be so in their head about how they look and how they're presenting to people, and how their ego is being received versus how their actual spirits are doing in real life, you
You
know?
dropping bars right now.
You feel me? And so I had to grapple with that coming up in me, and me sitting there thinking that I had healed all this stuff, right? And thinking I'm in this era of my life where I'm healing and I'm meditating and I'm working out and whatever, But deep down, I still have all of these such deep insecurities about my productivity as an artist, and my likability as an artist, and like all of these um external definitions of self that I needed to rid myself of in order to be at peace inside myself with my art. And so I really had to redefine it. And it was like, can I pay all my bills doing what I love? Yes. Can I help my friends out or my family out if I need to? Yes. Am I doing what I love in a free context where I have full creative control? Yes. So and any answer that was a no, I was like, how am I going to get there? What's my plan to getting to a point where, what is my actual goal? And my actual goal was freedom. My actual goal was not to sell my art or soul to a point where my masters are owned by some people who don't give a fuck about what happens to them. Like, my shit comes from my heart, and I mean what I'm talking about. And sometimes I don't. Sometimes I'm writing a story, you know what I'm saying? But that's art, and that's my expression. And it's still my reflection of what's going on in life, and that is sacred.
And you
And
mean what you saying about that story.
exactly. And that is sacred, because that music is one of the most potent mediums to communicate these kinds of concepts and these kinds of conversations in and through, and allow multiple people to come into a room that could even receive these kinds of conversations. Because like I said, my fans are the people who are coming to listen to this right now, like, they're the people who connected with me through music are the ones who are going to be listening to this conversation and allowing themselves to absorb the concept of abolition into their source, like, and that is so much more powerful than the accolades and the charts and all those things, I think, come in time when you dedicate yourself to your intention. You know what I'm saying? It can come quickly and leave you as quickly if you don't care about your intention and you care about impact, right? And you want to be quick about it and you want people to pay attention to you. But if you want to actually make a difference in people's spirits and connect with humans through your art, like, it takes time. It takes time, it takes development, it takes you actually living life and actually reflecting on what you've lived, And I feel like that is so potent and powerful in this practice of abolition and in this practice of freeing ourselves from the grips of these systems that are here. You know what I mean? That are here. They're not going away, and they're not going to be reformed. They're just going to come up with fancier ways to make them look appealing to us. You know what I'm saying?
Not on their own. It it requires our active participation.
Exactly. That's what I mean. Yeah.
Mhm. Thank you for saying all those things. And talking about what it is, I think, within art too, because something that I've learned as we've been building this company, managing artists and supporting artists, is like to really do this in a way that is not capitalist, that does not just put the money first. We have to, when we're developing artists, we're doing like, we're holding their whole human. Like at our company at Question Culture, we're offering all our artists on our roster free mental health care. And like we have 2 family conversations a month to be able to talk through the conflict that's going on amongst us as an organization, as well as like development, all personal development. And in addition to all the stuff that most labels do, which is like, you know, the vocal lessons and the piano lessons and da. What we learned is we really have to be actively taking care of our relationships, actively taking care of our mental health, making sure, like actively checking in with folks about how much they're working and what their goals are, and like,
To
and
maintain,
list out.
to maintain people instead of just
Yes.
getting people when they're burnt out.
And to grow, yeah, and to grow them so that this is like, we're trying to help these
Modern,
artists live their highest lives, not just make the most amount they can make for the label.
literally, so that the people who own the label can walk away and be able to drive around in Porsches and fucking own $1 million homes in Beverly Hills that you visit for dinner to talk about the
Right.
fucking album tracks that they are going to decide for you.
Right. Like it's not worth it. That's why in our
If you
label,
want to talk specific, if you want to talk specific, you know what I mean?
she was
Like,
getting ready to start saying names. She
I
was
don't
like,
need to. They know who they are.
period. Period. And I hope as folks hear that like I want to invite people who've been living that way. I want to say that we've all been taught to live that way, and it's not no judgment. And in many ways, we still do. I drive around like a little Nissan, right? My father passed in 2020, and I ended up, and now his car is my car, and I'm proud of that car because it was my dad's car, and I like driving it around. And one of my homeboys got like a luxury car, and I be
I
with
have a luxury car. I can't even front. I have a Tesla.
period. Don't listen. This is what I'm about to say.
That shit.
The homie got like a car, and I'll be pulling up in my little Nissan now, like, man, I should. And nothing wrong with my car, but now I'm looking to get something else. So I just say that to say we all think in that way, and we're taught,
Yeah,
taught in those ways, and it's no judgment. It's just way more fun over here where we taking care of our people.
It's just, I can say it's all simultaneous, right? This is what I mean. It's like I can live the life that I want to live for myself. Again, it doesn't need to be a life of absolute excess, but I can like have the things that I need for me, and then I can also give and share and be able to make sure that all my people around me are able to do the same. You know what I'm saying?
And we can build that into our companies itself. One of the ways we do it at Question Culture is in our ownership structure itself. It's not, I don't, even though I started this company, you know, when I was in prison, I don't own this company by myself anymore. Like all our the first like executives, employees, and artists who we brought on, we set aside a portion of the company for all of us to own it, because we're all making it what it is. So we split up 25% amongst the original 5 of us who are building it. And the rest of that 75%, all the quarterly earnings, the quarterly profits of the company, get split between the artists and the employees. So it's like we all own this shit together. We're all in this together. It's not like y'all all work for me. That's what capitalism tells us to do. Y'all all work for me. Now I get to be massa. I don't want to be that. I really don't. I want to, let's all work together and build some dope shit together and eat together.
Yeah, I mean that makes no sense.
Yeah, and these are the things. I mean, we're figuring out how to do it legally, because there's no real systems. The businesses, it's hard to even file a business in that way, because the business filings is all set up for capitalism, right? Because it's giving socialism.
And they're like, they're like, wait a minute, wait. No, this is bad. This could collapse our entire infrastructure, and then we won't be rich anymore. Even though they're still gonna be so rich.
Right. That's what's wild.
They will still be so rich regardless. The thing is, like, their children's children have money. So like
it's just all based on fear and ego.
You really don't need all that, baby. Like, you don't.
We don't. And we based our economy in our
what if your child doesn't even have a child? Then what? What if
now
he's gay?
all this for nothing?
What if he ends up being gay? You didn't even know.
Wait,
Like, come on. Because you can't, they don't end up having a kid because they choose not to. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you never know what's going to happen. Like, how are you planning, like, intergenerational wealth? You know what I'm saying? Like, how deep some of it goes. It's like, we can really reinvest into community. Like, we have the resources and ability to do so, you know?
yeah, it really is pointless and sad. And that's why I be looking at some of the things these folks have, and I'm just like, that's what it's worth it. It was worth destroying the earth for this car or for this whatever it is, this thing that you own. It's really not worth it. It's really not worth it.
I
And
also think though, like, it's one of those things of like collective shaming versus system shaming, right? Because I feel like a lot of these systems, we keep them going
mm-hmm,
via our own investment of
mm-hmm.
attention and money and time. You know what I mean? Like, we use our time, attention, and capital to invest into the systems that we're all a part of right now, every day, you
Mm-hmm.
know? So then it's more
Like
like
quite
of,
literally, like in the stock market.
yeah, literally. Like, and also our taxes. Like, we go to work physically, use our time to make profit, to be able to pay bills back to businesses, and then pay our taxes to a government who uses our taxes to do crazy shit.
Yeah, truly
So like,
wild. But
it's
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 that's
really
one of the
wild.
challenges. That's one of the challenges of capitalism and like, in prior oppressive systems, like in feudalism under kings and queens and stuff, you were born oppressed, and if you were born as a peasant, you're going to live and die as a peasant, and that was that. So it's almost easier to have uprisings because you had a group of people who were all fucked over in the same way. But what's interesting about capitalism is, for the right price, anybody can be the oppressor, and you too can own a portion of Amazon and make wealth off of the fact that folks aren't allowed to use the bathroom, right? Like that. But it's hard to see it that way. The same people who will be like, it's hard for
They're
us
like,
to,
I'm building intergenerational wealth for my
right,
children.
right. And they're not
That's
wrong.
it.
They're
They're
not
not,
wrong.
and they're not wrong. And it's also what they've been taught is the only way to survive. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? Because you, like, for example, my grandparents came over, they were immigrants, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like, they didn't speak the language, you know what I'm saying? So they had to completely create new lives for themselves. And when you're creating a new life for yourself in a foreign country, you're gonna assimilate. Like, you have to assimilate for survival. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Mhm.
you have to move in. Of course, yeah, you're gonna keep your culture and you're going to
Sure.
like nurture that culture in the privacy of your spaces, in your personal communities, you know what I'm saying? But when you're out in the world, in the workforce, in these schooling systems, in participating in systems of country that's not yours, you have to move in such a way where you're following the rules, because if you don't follow the rules, you end up in jail.
Sure.
You don't follow the rules, you end up dead. You end up
Yeah,
not
legally
not
and
being able to
socially
own a home.
too.
And socially too, exactly.
Which is I think that's a big part of it. Like, um, a lot of folks come here and then get on the same bullshit that we're on over here, and people wonder like how that happens. But it's like, socially, what we do socially really matters. It really
Really
matters.
matters.
Sometimes folks can't understand. They'll hear about some crime in the news and be like, why would somebody do that? Like these hazings where, or whatever, like but it's like, what, being accepted into the group as human beings is really important to us. When we feel isolated, it literally damages our mental health, our physical health. So we'd be willing to do off the wall ass shit for
It's
the acceptance of
biological.
others.
It's a biological thing.
Mm-hmm,
And that's the thing that people don't, that's the thing that our criminal justice system doesn't have any nuance for at
mm-hmm,
all. Like, why someone would even be in a gang in the first place, like why somebody would need community like that. You know what I'm saying? Like, loyal community. Why would someone want that or seek that, be a part of that?
mm-hmm.
Why does violence drive it? Where does violence come from? What are the like what is violence a symptom of? Why don't we get to that?
Woo!
Because
Right.
if you until we get to that, nothing's gonna get
Yeah.
addressed, you know?
Yeah.
'Cause
You
if we
can't
can't even
scare people.
grapple, yeah, if we can't grapple with the truth of what got us to this moment, and we can't see it for what it is, and come up with a plan, like a collective plan on how we're gonna heal it, we're gonna keep in this loop. We've been in a cycle for years, bro. Like, so many hundreds of, I don't even know how many fucking years, to be honest, but like, cycle,
Mhm.
like watching the same news cycle over and over again, watching the same systematic. murder happen, watching the same, you know what I'm saying? It's like,
Mhm.
when are we all just gonna be like, hey, we need a new approach?
I think it'll happen one by one when people like you and like what we're doing at Question Culture, like we're building it into our infrastructure. So, you know, when they see our companies do well, they're gonna be like, oh, wait, if Attunement and QC, if they don't need punishment structures, if they don't need like, you know, the power structure and all that corporate shit, the fucking the capitalist ownership structures where Lauren just owns everything and Richie just owns everything. If we are not acting like that and our companies do well, we then show the rest of, even in just our direct community, just in the music community, like this is another way you can move in your company. I think that's how we do it one by one. We each take it on and apply it in our own lives. And then over the course of time, we will create a new norm just by showing people it's literally better
Possible.
over here. It's possible,
That's
and it's like
that's
fulfilling.
exactly what I my little slogan to myself is: render the systems obsolete.
Mm-hmm.
Like, to render them obsolete, just move in such a way or create realities that are just more appealing for people to be a part of.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying? Like, even like, I mean, this is just a thought. I'm sure it's happening somewhere, it already exists to some degree, but like a number that people can call when they feel unsafe, you know, like that's not just the police, that will help them feel safer in whatever circumstance they're in, that's more, you know, reform, like just like healing justice oriented, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's just so many different ways that we can like
so many.
start functioning with each other, um that will be so much healthier for us as a collective, so that we don't burn ourselves out and burn this planet out, like,
Mm-hmm.
realistically.
I was having a conversation. A friend of mine, we were inside together, and now he works at Success Stories, an organization where we do toxic masculinity workshops with folks inside. And he was saying that another one of his friends, she was in a domestic abuse situation, and her partner, who was also abusing her, was like following her. She went to her parents' house, and dude was like in front of the house, banging on the door, demanding her to come out. And she asked him, like, what should I do in that situation? I don't want to call the police. She had been locked up before, and her dude had been locked up before. She's
And
like,
also, women statistically are more likely, the person who's being abused is statistically more likely to go to prison than the abuser also.
mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, people all the time, like, so, and she knows that. So she was like, I'm not gonna call them.
I don't want to call the police, they're not going to help me. Exactly.
And he asked me, he was like, what should I say? Like, and you know, it's not like I have all the answers or whatever, but I offered him my opinion of what I thought could be helpful. And I said, tell her to call literally everyone else. Everyone who cares about her will show up in this moment. If I cared about somebody and they hit me
I'm
up,
sorry.
oh,
Wait,
we froze. You hear me now?
say that one more time. Yeah, you froze. Sorry. Can you say that one
Oh,
more time?
good. I said,
Call up everyone else.
I would encourage her to call everybody else in her phone. Call everyone who cares about her and tell them to pull up.
Yeah, but the thing is, there's a lot of people out there who don't have anybody like that.
That's
And
true.
also, a huge part about domestic violence is that the abuser isolates you from your support systems in the beginning. And you believe that it's your responsibility to isolate yourself because you don't want to cause a problem, you don't want to cause an altercation, you don't want to cause the person that you're with to become violent with you. So you slowly but surely cut yourself off from your support system. And also, a lot of people lose their support systems because it's hard for people who love you to watch you allow yourself to be abused. You know what I'm saying? Quote unquote, allow yourself, because obviously you're not allowing yourself. It's a mental health issue. But like,
True.
you know, there's not a lot of safe spaces for women to understand their power. There's not a lot of safe, and also there's domestic violence in all kinds of gender expressions. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? Abuser and abused, it does not have a gender expression.
Mm-hmm.
That, like, the concept of power versus non-powerful in a relationship, like a submissive and dominance, and this inability for there to be a recognition of mutual power in an empowerment of self within the context of a relationship. You know, a lot of people get into relationships in a transactional with a transactional mindset of how can this person serve me, and how can I serve this person, and how can we serve capitalism, like how can we serve like the systems that are at play. and patriarchy and what my role as a man or my role as a woman is supposed to be. And I feel like that has us all so fucked up, like just in terms of the ways that we relate to one another, because we think that we're on these two completely different planes of existence when really we're all human beings and we all have emotional triggers and we all have traumas and we all feel a wide range and spectrum of expression throughout our lives for whatever reason and whatever order we do. You know what I'm saying? So it's further the further away we get from the conversations that need to happen about like in the household, in ourselves, about our own traumas and taking accountability for our own traumas and coming to the table and wanting to heal our own traumas. And I feel like that also comes with the healing justice concept of like, there's not bad or good, you know?
Right.
There
Yep.
is traumatized and unconscious, and there is, you know, healing and conscious. There's like, those are like the two,
Mm.
I feel like, things that are always at play in people, you know? It's like they're either acting because they're triggered in an unhealed manner, or when they're triggered, they're able to handle their shit from a healed manner, depending on how connected they are to tools necessary to do that, you know? And I feel like this culture that we currently live in does not make those tools accessible to people,
No.
especially folks who really need it, like who really, really need it. You know, there's no help for single mothers who are in domestic violence situations. There's no help for, you know what I mean? Like the court demonizes and criminalizes people before they ever see the nuance in a person's existence and story, you know? And as long as we have those systems deciding whether or not family units can be together, whether or not family units, or not even family units, but just like relationships are able to flow the way that they're meant to, not necessarily the paperwork, like we're going to keep having instances of like children not having their kids and being traumatized by these foster care systems, kids going to prison because they have behavioral issues because they don't have emotional support in their households. Like, you know, there's so many different ways that this manifests.
Yeah, because those are, like you were saying, those are just all symptoms. A lot of
All of
times
it.
we're looking to solve problems that are just symptoms of us having a disconnected society. We're deeply disconnected from one another. We don't know the names of the people who live around us. We don't, like, we're so deeply, we're literally all out here on our own as individuals, told that we're in competition with one another. And the only way, now that we're in competition with another, of course we need referees to keep us safe that can out-violence us, because now you might be in between me and my next meal. So I'm coming for you. So there got to be somebody coming for me with more violence than I got for you. But we don't actually have, we could end the game. We don't have to play that game. We don't have to be in competition with one another and in these deeply disconnected ways of being. But it does take that self-work. It starts with the self-accountability. It starts with this, like, do I know when I am triggered? Do I know how to talk through my feelings? Do I know how to be accountable? Motherfuckers is always talking about, we need to hold this person accountable. Like someone who did something illegal or bad in the news, they need to be held accountable. Bro, do you know how to be accountable? Like, and that doesn't mean they don't need to be, but let's start with ourselves.
Right. What if it was you that had a spotlight held to your darkest moments? What if it was you that had everybody find out about that mistake you made in your life that helped you become a better person because you were able to learn from it? If we all get re-traumatized every time we make a mistake, and we all get into the mentality, which I feel like most of our culture is in right now, like because of cancel culture, I feel like people aren't honest or transparent anymore about how they really feel about shit. And the thing is, even though people are gonna say crazy shit, and they will say crazy shit, and it's not everybody's responsibility to respond to the crazy shit, to be fair. But like those things need to be talked about and addressed in a way that doesn't make that person feel like there's no room for them to become better people. Because if they don't feel like there's any capacity for them to change anyways, they're not going to even try. You know what I'm saying? Like if they feel safer running into or further into what they already fear, they're going to do that versus trying to come into what's calling itself love, but is only harmful, you know, like
we don't have like a shared value for transformation yet. Like there's not, so it's hard to be the person who
let's talk about that. I would love to talk about that, because I think most people's hang up with abolition is like, okay, yeah, but like what about all the bad people? Like what about the rapists? What about the murderers? What about like people who absolutely aren't getting the concept that they're harming people and have zero, repentance for it. Like, what do we do with those people, right?
Yeah. People ask those questions, I think because they've never actually been to a prison or even really spoken to anybody who has.
I
And when
completely
you actually go to prisons, you'll notice that like it's a bunch of regular motherfuckers in there. And it's not like these people who are so scary, these demon people. It's a
Those
bunch
people are out in the world, baby, running systems.
and that's not to say there aren't people who are still deeply committed to doing harmful shit, but a lot of it, I'll say this. I was in prison for 7 years. I met maybe 10,000 people. There's probably like 8 dudes who I met who I was like, yo, I would not want to be around this person on the outside. Like this dude is really like in his shit right now. And every single one of them came from deep, deep trauma and were deep in mental health struggles actively. And those things can actually be treated. So the questions that I often ask people is, they say, what about the rapists and the murderers? I say, if there is a pill that someone can take that would make it just a magic pill that they would never rape or murder again, would you let them out and give them the pill? And most people say no. And I say, okay, then let's be clear. You're not interested in safety, you're interested in revenge. And that's just where you are today. That's a fair human emotion. Let's talk about that. It's not good or bad. Let's just talk about it. But let's make sure we don't base laws in it, because now you're fucking up people's lives and missing opportunities. Even when something really harmful happens, that's an opportunity to get understanding and make sure it never happens again. But if all we do is focus on punishing the person who did it, we miss all that learning opportunity. So of course it happens over and over. We could have had one mass shooting and learned so much from it and changed the way we treated each other. But instead we just locked those people up, and now we have one every single day.
Yeah, but I feel like even beyond locking them up, we refuse to hold things accountable. Like we refuse to have those actual honest conversations because everything is up for debate in our current culture because of like comment sections and these rigid ideas of a binary that exist in so many different elements of our lives, aspects of our lives. The idea of a binary that there's like one thing and there's an exact opposite of it always, it doesn't allow us to see people's humanity. It doesn't allow us to see the nuance that it is to be alive. Like when I was younger, my mom used to tell me all the time, she's like, you always see everything so black and white, like everything is so, she's like, you need to learn that there's a gray scale. We live in a gray scale. There's always going to be nuance to why things are the way they are or aren't the way they aren't, And if we continue to, these systems are set up that way, though. That's another thing that we have to be real about, is like they want us to keep making those same mistakes because they profit off of it. They profit off of people being in prison. As long as they're profiting off of it, they're not going to change what the structure is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's something we were talking earlier about how the police are for real. If the police were really, really concerned with safety, they would be having this conversation. They would be reading these books. They would at least try it, They would at least be like, what are they talking about over here? Because we're just here to keep people safe. So we're down to try everything, but they're not, right? They're not. They don't read these books.
They know very well that's not, nobody that I know would get into the police force because they wanted to be a police, like because they're thinking safety. It's all about a false sense of authority and impunity. Like it's the idea, like if you were to ask me if I'm looking at the police force from an outside in, and I happen to have violent tendencies, or I happen to be racist, or I happen to, feel the need to exercise that kind of violence over people or dominance over people, why wouldn't I become a policeman? Because on top of that, on top of what the culture is, how simple it is to become a policeman, how simple the training is, like how non-rigorous, what I'm saying, it is to be able to get a gun in your hand and be someone who's supposed to be protecting people in situations of violence,
Yeah,
most of the people are actually cowards, and that's the actual issue, is they're not actually trained to show up in a way that's helpful. They're scared of what they're confronted by and don't know how to handle that trauma that they're seeing,
I hear you. I speaking from my own experience, I feel like a lot of cops who really did want to like keep people safe, and that's what led them there.
Led them there to begin with. That's what led them there to begin with.
Yeah, DAs too, and like especially like a lot of women DAs who are like want to help protect like women and girls, and like I have seen stuff like that. I've also met a lot of cops. I remember I met this 18-year-old kid one time. And he's like, I'm about to drop out of school and either go to the military or become a cop. I'm like, why? He's like, I want to be a badass. That's the same reason why I became a gang member. Like, so there's that entry point into law enforcement too. But I think ultimately, even for the folks with the best intentions in the world, the cops do what the legislature and the judges and the district attorneys tell them to do. And those systems have proven that they're influenced by all kinds of shit, money and power, and am I going to get reelected, and da 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 da. And so I think even the law enforcement with the best intentions in the world, I would encourage them to have a really honest conversation with themselves about who they're serving and if they're doing more harm than good.
Absolutely. I've had some really beautiful conversations with people who used to be in the service, and like why they ended up leaving, or why they ended up, finding a different route of protecting people, if that's their calling, if that truly was their calling. Because I feel like that is a lot of people's actual calling. I feel like a lot of people are called to protect others and to be helpful and to be able to, de-escalate violence. Like, I feel like that's a super honorable thing to want to do. But when you're never questioning the culture of where you're working, or whether all of the people around you in your department are on that same tip, that's not the ethos of the department that you're a part of, then what are you doing?
Yeah, it's irresponsible. And
it's just, I feel like it's just like terrorism that we pay for with our own money.
Yeah, it's truly. I think I know we got to wrap in a second, but
True. Sorry. We just
all good. Something I really want to like leave folks with, or that I'm always excited to say, is like it starts with our own accountability. It starts with us. Like, the whole world doesn't need to change for us to change, for me to change. And what I'm really focused on right now is trying to embody my values as a person and in my company as Question Culture, and hopefully let that be a model for others to see that capitalism and revenge and punishment and violence and that's not the only way to live, and it's not the only way to live well. And I'm just trying to show that. And I hope that all your folks that are listening know they can do the same thing in whatever their world is. Like, they can do the hard work of relying on connection instead of official rules and violence and domination and laws and corporate culture to run their life. They can seek understanding out of conflict instead of revenge. These are things we get to do for ourselves, and it transforms the world around us.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing your brilliant observations.
Thank you so much for having, and thank you for yours too. You were spitting, like, I'm over notes for real.
I love it. I love being able to have real life conversations about connecting these dots, because like we talked about such a wide range of aspects of being alive, like artistry and family life and relationships romantically, or connections and friendships, or corporately, but all of them and how they connect to the concept of abolition, and how we are gonna, as a collective, start to heal the wounds that we all have because of our pasts, our collective past, and our individual pasts, and we have to really come to a culmination of how we're going to move forward, because we can't keep going in these loops. We're making ourselves sick, literally.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, we can, but we're going to keep getting what we have now. We can't walk outside and breathe the air. You can't drink the water. You can't touch people. Like
what? Like, no, that's not how we're supposed to be here. So,
right.
Yeah, I appreciate you, friend, and your work.
Likewise,
and
friend.
I just wish you lots of light and protection and continued blessings.
Likewise, friend. Big love to you. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Peace.